Hello and welcome to another My Aspie Married video. I want to ask you a question. Do you think diagnosis, an official diagnosis, is necessary? Some neurotypical partners feel that a diagnosis is necessary in order for their partners to acknowledge and understand that they have a specific condition and that there are ways of managing and dealing with that condition, and that if they never find out that they're on the spectrum, they'll never understand themselves and how they tick and what sets them off and how to feel meltdowns and shutdowns before they happen and things like that. And I can see how it would be beneficial. I do know a number of neurotypical people who have partners who refuse to believe that they're on any kind of spectrum, let alone acknowledging that the things that they're doing are damaging to the relationship. And admittedly, I've been there. That was my deal. I had this relationship that was really stressful in so many different ways. And whenever I would talk to my partner about it, he would tell me that there was nothing wrong with him and I was the weird one, I was the odd one out. And because I dated neurotypicals before him, I knew that that wasn't the case. If I was so peculiar the way that he says, people would have been telling me long before him. And because he wasn't the same as the neurotypicals I dated, I knew that he was the one who was different. I just didn't know what. And I found that without knowing the what, it was really hard to work out how to move forward. For me, however, I don't care whether my partner gets an official diagnosis. I don't even care if he admits it or acknowledges that he has it. In fact, we'll have conversations and he'll say things like, see, I'm good with finances and I hold down a job, so therefore I don't have it. And see, I'm not leaving all these tasks undone around the house, therefore I don't have it. And that's his kind of go-to rhetoric, comparing himself to, say, other individuals and their particular traits and saying that because he's not like them, he doesn't have it. And even our new counsellor, who specialises in neurodiverse, asked me the same question, you know, do I want an official diagnosis? And I said the same thing to her. I said, it doesn't bother me whether he thinks he has it or not. What matters to me is that I now know that he has it. I now know what's going on for him. And I've done my research and I've learned all different tips and tricks and manner of bits and pieces to help me interact with him better. So whether he admits it or not is irrelevant to me. And I know that I don't speak for everybody when I say this. I'm just saying from my own perspective, it's neither here nor there whether he admits it or not. I found once I knew that he was on the spectrum, and I started to research and see that, oh yes, he's got that trait, he's got that trait, he's got that trait, he's got that trait. Everything became clear to me. My world went quiet. My brain went quiet. Up till that point, I had just been running this diagnostics in my head. Why is he doing that? What's he thinking? What's making him do this particular thing? Why is he, that particular way? Why can't I reason with him? Why isn't he being logical? Why is he stressing over things that don't matter? Etc, etc, etc. And I was constantly trying to figure out what made him tick. I kind of saw it as my, I guess, role as his wife to understand my husband. And once I knew that he was on the spectrum and then I researched and learned, I thought, ah, got it, right, now I see. And admittedly, I had been changing and adapting my behaviours and interactions based on the responses that he was giving me, much the same as I do with my children. For example, my son who's on the spectrum, he came home from school one day, in fact it was his very first day of school, and he walks in the door and I say to him, remember to take your shoes off, and he just melts down. And I didn't know it was a meltdown at the time, I would have just called it a tantrum, but he absolutely just hits the deck. He's crying, arms and legs everywhere, he's throwing his bag, he's just gone, just melted. And I was just kind of watching him and thinking, oh, that's an unusual reaction. I haven't seen that before in any of my children. What's going on? And so I learned from that. When he's walked in the door from a hard day of school, the last thing he wants is for me to give him a direction. And so I changed and adapted my behaviour to suit whatever thing that he brought up. And I learned to do the same thing with my husband. He would do something after I did something, and then I would know, okay, when I do that, this happens. And so then I would change what I did. For example, when he used to follow me around the house all the time, badgering me about things, I started to stop engaging. I just started to think to myself, I'm not going to argue with him. I'm not going to go there with him. I'm going to just quietly step away and let him argue with himself. And it's the same as the phone calls. When he was calling me up and arguing with me on the phone and I started to press the buttons or hang up, I was always adapting the way that I behaved and interacted with regards to something that they were giving to me, a behaviour that they were exhibiting. And so even prior to knowing that he was on the spectrum, I'd always been trying to change and alter my responses, not so much to placate him, though that was definitely a thing, because we did have moments of walking on eggshells, and I definitely felt like I couldn't be myself at times or else it was going to set him off. So there were certainly bits of that, but mostly it was like, I don't know, to give you a random analogy, let's say he yelled at me and I slapped him. Then he exploded more. Obviously I'm going to be thinking, well, I say obvious, but you never know. For some people it might not be, but I'm going to then be thinking, okay, slapping him didn't work. And so then let's say the next time he's yelling at me, I start yelling back. And then he gets louder and louder and the whole thing gets terrible and explodes and whoa, right? Again, I'm going to learn, okay, now I can't slap him and I can't yell back. What's left? And I just keep working my way through ways to deal with things. So obviously I learned when he starts yelling, I just stand there really quietly waiting for him to stop. And I'm not like frowning at him and really angry, you know. I'm not standing there like, I'm just kind of like, I'm bored. What's the time? Are we done yet? You know. And just casually wait. Sometimes I will just walk away. Other times I will go into the room and lock the door so that he can't follow me around the house. And eventually my responses would change his responses, so that he would then get to a point where he would be thinking, yelling isn't working, she's not doing what I want. And so I guess in that sense he's adapting as well. So that's a pretty cool thing. And so yeah, I'm getting a little bit off track and a little bit on a tangent, as I do. But the main thing is, me knowing is what helps me then figure out how to change my responses. I'm learning which responses will work and which ones don't. For example, when he walks in the door from work, the last thing he's going to want is for me dumping all of my crap and stresses on him. So he's not going to walk in the door and I'm going to go, oh, this kid did that and this happened and the stove exploded and blah, 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 blah. Poor guy's just going to, you know, have a heart attack. So I casually wait. So I'm learning, you know, to adapt and respond accordingly. So for me, him officially believing that he has it, getting an official diagnosis, acknowledging that he has it, it's irrelevant to me because I know. It would be the same with my son. Had I found out he was on the spectrum and then he never knew he was on the spectrum, I would still have been adapting, and I had always been adapting because I only found out he was on the spectrum when he was in high school, so we'd gone through his whole younger years knowing that there was something different about him compared to his siblings, but not knowing what, because autism and Asperger's weren't a thing in my era, believe it or not. It was just not something that we knew very much about. And so I had just been parenting and changing the way that I interacted with my son who was on the spectrum compared to how I dealt with his siblings, because certain things worked and certain things didn't. And I'm doing the exact same thing with my husband. So for me, I don't matter, I don't care, I don't mind whether he believes it, acknowledges it, understands it or not. But as I said, I'm probably alone in that regard. However, in my case, it is enough for me to just know within myself. It's similar to an ex-friend who's narcissistic. I didn't know that she was at the time that I was friends with her. I just knew there was something really wrong with how she operated. She was one of those people who was super nice to your face, but she would literally backstab you as soon as you left the room to the people who were left over. And then you'd walk back in and everybody'd be really frosty and rude. And I'd be walking in going, oh yeah, I see what's going on here, you know. And so I didn't know that she was narcissistic. The point I'm getting at, of course, is that to me, now that I know that she's narcissistic, it is so relevant to me whether she knows it or not. It makes no difference to my world and my decision to step away from that friendship, whether she knows what's going on with her or not. I know, I get it, I understand, moving away from that, see you later, thank you, goodbye. It's the same with my husband. He doesn't have to acknowledge it at all. I know, and that's all that matters for me. Anyway, as usual, leave a comment below whether you agree or disagree, official diagnosis or not. Is it important to you that your partner has that official diagnosis? Or are you quite happy to meander along, understanding them, learning about them, adapting your behaviours, and that's fine, you're okay with that? Let me know, comment below, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I really do appreciate it.